Welcome to part 8 of this video series on problem solving, where we get into exploring solutions. So solutions are really discovered when we introduce injections, and for those that are not familiar with the term, in theory of constraint speak, an injection, at least in the context of the evaporating cloud, is a state, condition or action that invalidates one or more assumptions underlying the relationship in an evaporating cloud. You recall in the previous part of this video series that we exposed what we considered to be invalid assumptions, but that in its own right isn't enough. We now need to introduce an injection that will invalidate what we suspect at this point to be an invalid assumption. There's a subset of injections called breakthrough injections, which also exist, and these are highly creative win-win out-of-the-box type solutions, and typically used in a chronic conflict. And you could well argue that the marketing, who pays for the marketing cost, is a chronic conflict because it's enduring and it exists continuously across and has for many years in different places in the world. So creating a breakthrough injection, just for those that are interested, is much more than just restructuring a compromise or making a minor change to resolving the conflict. Often it addresses the issue at a much deeper level, and for those that are familiar with TOC and some of the solutions that are in the marketplace today, such as drum buffer rope, buffer management, critical chain replenishment and so on, these would be certainly considered to be breakthrough injections and examples of that. So let's come back to the marketing issue, and you can see in this slide that what I've done is I've summarized where we've got to so far, where when analyzing the assumptions we identified these false assumptions, and these should be familiar to you because they're the ones that we talked about in the previous part of this video series. This is where they were located, between A and C and between C and D prime. And this was largely the justification or the arguments that I presented as to why I considered them to be false assumptions, or certainly subject to further scrutiny. So I won't go through all of this because we've already done that in a previous video. So I'm just going to concentrate on the possible injections, and you can see that I've actually identified 4. And the first one is to establish a commission structure that pays more percentage above a standard price point and less below that point. So an example of, if you go back to the example that I talked about earlier, which was a $500,000 house, and the agent's earning 4% on that, and you know, for every extra $50,000 that the house sells for, the agent only earns an extra $2,000, which is not all that significant in total absolute dollar terms, compared at least to the $20,000 that he or she earns when the house is sold for $500,000. So what's being proposed here is that this injection suggests that perhaps you know, the amount that the agent earns up to $500,000 is not 4%, but perhaps you could reduce that down to 2% by negotiation or some lower amount. But what you do is you increase the commission percentage earned above the $500,000. So for example, you might even increase that to 8% and say, look, I'm willing to pay 8% commission on sales values above $50,000. So this gives a direct incentive to the agent to push for that extra $50,000 because he's going to earn the double the fee that he would have otherwise earned by chasing those extra dollars. So that certainly would start to align the agent's behaviour with that which the owner would want to gain. The second one is around seeking transparency on marketing costs. It's quite possible that the agent, because they're in the business of selling houses and they engage internet marketers and online brochure and print houses on a regular basis, that they earn significant rebates and or commissions on volume. And if that's the case, then they should be passing those on to you for two reasons. One is because it should be only the net marketing costs that the owner pays. But secondly, because there's an obligation to declare any such rebates or commissions to the owner in that principal-agent relationship. So it's quite appropriate for that to be included in the negotiation if the owner is to pay for the marketing costs, which is in fact what conclusion I came to as a result of doing this exercise, that the owner should pay the marketing costs. The third injection is that to the extent that the marketing campaign also benefits the agent, and these benefits would come in the form of them using the same ad that they are using to promote your house. Within that ad, they're also promoting their own agency, about other services that the agent may provide, and so it's quite appropriate for a negotiation to be had around, well, you know, if these are benefits that you gain as a result of the ad being placed and the brochures being distributed and so on, that perhaps, you know, there's a sharing of those costs and you might pay 80% and they pay 20% based on the fact that they gain that advantage. And then fourthly, the other final injection I came up with was to negotiate an inverse graduated sharing of the marketing costs based on sales price achieved. So, you know, this scenario would be that the higher the price that you gain, the more you, the owner, pay for those marketing costs. The lower the price, the less you pay. Or you could do it completely in reverse. But the point of this one is that there's a graduation of those costs to the extent that you believe that the agent should pay. But as I said earlier, my personal view is that I think that the owner should pay for the reasons that have been stated previously in the conflict cloud, but on the proviso that these injections address some of the existing anomalies that appear to be the case currently. So this concludes the exercise in understanding how to identify or how to solve problems, and in particular using the marketing costs who pays scenario. So what would happen from here is that you would sit down with the agent as part of your initial negotiation, and you might present this conflict cloud to the agent. You would typically present his point of view, which would be that the owner pays for the costs of marketing. That would show empathy to the agent, explaining that point of view. Then you would introduce the second leg, which would show the other perspective where the owner doesn't pay. The agent would then gain some appreciation of the effort that you've gone into in developing the different points of view. You would then expose the assumptions and then the false assumptions, and ultimately these possible injections. And it would be through that process that you would end up with a negotiated position which hopefully would be to the satisfaction of both the owner and the agent, which ultimately is the purpose of problem solving, and the use of the conflict cloud, evaporating cloud in particular, is to develop win-win solutions for both parties. So I hope this has been of interest to you. There is one final video, and that's a video explaining where to from here, but the essence of problem solving has now been covered off in these parts of the video series.